Welcome to 2021, the era where no one is making anything but crossovers and SUVs. Well, no one except for those crazy Germans and Japanese. A fad started by FCA, whatever they're calling themselves nowadays, quickly followed suit by Ford, and then sadly General Motors jumped on the bandwagon as well. But about that last one, there just may be a very small corner of General Motors that's still making those things that you and I used to call cars. Okay, so the first step in making a car worth anything would be to bless it with some power. And sadly, this has not been blessed with as much power as our beloved Cadillac CT5 V, which was the brainchild of none other than the mad scientist that is Dave Leone. Rather, this is a different tool for a different job. Think more along the lines of an AMG 53 series or an Audi S-Line. As such, it's been blessed with more than a reasonable amount of power. 360 horsepower or 405 pound-feet of torque that comes from a 3-liter twin-turbocharged V6. Now, there are two options in how to translate that power to reality for you and I, and that would be either as this car, rear-wheel drive, which we like, or all-wheel drive. Then there are two other, let's say, bits of reality here. The first would be fuel economy. Here, it doesn't suck. 18 in the city, 27 on the highway, 26 if it were all-wheel drive. Then there are the performance figures. VMAX, you see, the CT5 V, that was a 200-mile-an-hour car, and the folks at Cadillac tell me there will be another version of this. They call that the Blackwing, and it will have a manual transmission. So let's put a pin in that discussion, come back to it when we drive that car, and just focus on 0 to 60 here. Very respectable at 4.6 seconds. Okay, so here we go, 3,974 pounds, or depending on how you express your weights and measures, 1,803 kilograms. Now, a little inside baseball, I normally do the conversion for you guys from metric to imperial or vice versa. However, there is only one car manufacturer that does the conversion for me before they hand me the car, and oddly, it's Cadillac. With that, track mode. And there, wow, 3,000 RPM, it's a switch, it just comes on, pulls to almost 6,000 RPM. This is a bit of a surprise. I did not expect this much power, this much grunt from like the middle model of the Cadillac world. That is paired with a 10-speed torque converter automatic. Again, that's another bit of a surprise because I didn't expect it to work so well. Because normally when you have too many gears, and 10 is a lot of gears, does a lot of hunting, and usually the manual operation is not great. But here, not only does it work well in the auto mode, like I'm actually better just, But anyway, let's get our composure back here. If you do want to shift the gears yourself, it is somewhat direct. There isn't a delay like some of the other torque converter automatics you and I have driven as of late, and there's very few denied shifts. Now, being that General Motors has been so kind to give us a car, we need to have that discussion: design. And here, most Cadillac nerds are looking at this thing saying, that looks an awful lot like a concept car I saw a couple of years ago, and there you would be partially correct. You see, this is unlike the Lexus LC500 that went from concept directly into production. Rather, this is taking the proportions of the Cadillac Escala concept car and applying them to a production vehicle. The biggest aspect that made it from concept to production is the daylit opening. You look at the windows here, and really it's the proportion change from the art and science design that was like 20, 25 years of Cadillacs to this. You look at the proportions of the windows to the metal of the vehicle, there's more glass than there is metal. They've also tried to make this look like a fastback, kind of like an Audi S7, but it does have a trunk. Now, there's two other things going on here that one really doesn't see unless they spend some time looking at the car in person. The first is the surfacing of the vehicle. Believe it or not, there are organic fenders and organic quarter panels that make this thing look muscular when you see it in the right light in person. Then something that works in conjunction with that is the size of the wheels. This is not a vehicle that has wagon wheels on it. Instead, they have specifically chosen to put wheels that have sidewalls on them, meaning the wheels on the performance version of this car, meaning the V version of this car, are 19 inches. And it's when those two aspects come together that one truly sees the impact of this design. Now, yes, I still personally prefer the more in-your-face Cadillac CT5 V, but now that I've seen this coming and going for a couple of months, I see where they were going with this. It's two things. Number one, it's more understated. And number two, in a sea of blah mid-size sedans, this does indeed stand out whether you like the design or not. Now, me personally, I would suggest Cadillac design should take a page not out of the Escala, rather the El Mirage. So driving dynamics here are a bit unusual, and no, it's not because of the setup. There it's rather pedestrian, struts up front, 5-link in the rear, but this is a Cadillac, and at that, a Cadillac that's designed to go fast. So magnetic ride control is called the 4.0 version. That is fitted as standard here, and it does a magnificent job in controlling pitch, squat, dive, and roll. Better than most adjustable systems. And then something that works hand in hand with that, the steering, that's another thing where it's like black and white different. When you're driving it around town, the steering, I hate to use like the old auto journalist line of like vague on center feel, but that's exactly what it is. Vague on center feel when you're driving down the regular boulevard. But when you put this thing in track mode, via con Dios, the characteristics of the steering absolutely change. The weighting is just about perfect, something I would not expect in like a mid-size Cadillac, even in the mid-size performance version. Then we press on to the brakes, and there it's not exactly all good news. It's kind of a hybrid of sorts. The front, they are Brembo brakes, 13.6-inch diameter. In the rear, they kind of weight 12.4-inch diameter. And I have to say, when you start your day out and you're pushing it aggressively and using the brakes, they work wonderful. I would say the pedal modulation, kind of like the steering in track, is just about perfect. But there is something you and I do not experience very often in most of these performance cars, and that is fade. And here I am on a canyon road, not a track day, and I'm experiencing fade. If I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, it's because of the small rotors in the back. And that brings us to the unusual part of the driving dynamics, which would be the size. Remember how the CTS, the car that kind of came before this, that was like a tweener. It sat between a 3 Series and a 5 Series in terms of length and wheelbase. This is like smack dab right where 5 Series and E-Class is. It's a 116-inch wheelbase, where a 5 Series is what, like 115.7. But this feels different than a 5 Series. It feels different than an E-Class because you feel like you're sitting so much farther forward in this car, almost like it's a chauffeur-driven car, almost like it's a 7 Series in wheelbase, not a mid-size like 5 Series. Like, for example, if you and I were to go back to our proportion discussion, look at the length of the rear doors. They look longer here than in, say, a 5 Series or an E-Class. And what does that translate to in terms of on the road here, or literally where the rubber meets the road? I'd say there's times where you can push this thing, you get a little bit of understeer, and the car can get somewhat clumsy because of the length of the vehicle. I don't know if it's something that can be dialed out through suspension tuning, but I am very eager to drive the Blackwing version of this to see what they do in terms of dealing with the size of the vehicle and so much extra power. That said, in advance of it, this is an unusually fun car to drive. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game on the options game with today's contestant. An incredibly nice break from a baby buggy. This one, the 2021 Cadillac CT5 V rear-wheel drive, for a base price of $47,795. Now, I do feel it prudent to point out that if this were not a V, meaning a basic CT5 with a 4-cylinder engine, it'd be about 10 grand cheaper at $37,990. To that, we add the color. Yes, they do charge extra for red. However, Santa Maria Madre de Dios, Velocity Red. Not only is it something to behold, I have had virtually everybody and their mother who are not car people come up to me and say, wow, that is quite a car. I would say well worth the $625. Then we have to add the Platinum package. That includes the all-important panoramic sunroof, and then the same leather that one would have on a Platinum version of an Escalade, the semi-aniline leather, which makes the seats really stand out here. Even the backs of the seats are something to behold. However, my quarrel with this, $6,290. And you still have to add the premium package which adds the navigation, optional, almost $50,000 car, the Bose stereo, which kind of kicks, as well as some other bits, $5,290. Then the driver's assistance package. This also includes the advanced security package, but most importantly, this is the adaptive cruise control. Something very important to point out, that is not the Super Cruise. Super Cruise is optional starting with the 2021 model year. However, the folks at Cadillac tell me starting in the summer of 2021. So the adaptive cruise here is optional for $1,950. Then the driver's awareness package, or the driver's awareness plus package. This is the auto dim headlights, as well as the lane keep assist. A little bit of a bargain at $500. Then the only other thing we add is the destination and handling from the home of the Michigan State Spartans, Lansing, Michigan, $995 for a total retail price of $63,445. You and I have come away rather impressed with two recent, very important General Motors products, the Escalade and the Corvette. And no, not driving dynamics, not the power delivery, rather the fit and finish and the color and trim on the inside. This clearly someone who was either working on the Escalade and or the Corvette team, or someone spoke to someone that was working on the Cadillac and or Escalade team, was working on this, because the color and trim is good. But this is more of a mixed bag than those cars were. Yeah, it suffers from the usual materials degrade as you go lower in the vehicle. That's not just a GM saying, all manufacturers do it, even Rolls-Royce. But here, some of the struggle is the materials at eye level, or even materials you touch. And that's where the mixed bag is. Like, for example, you look at the HVAC controls. Beautiful toggle switches, incredibly good UX here, kind of like we saw in the Escalade. Something that, frankly, it's one of the safer ones out there, even with this unified controller here. But then you look at some of the other switchgear pieces, like the top of the dash, or the top of the door panels, or below the seats. Just not great. Something I'd like to see some work there, because they did a beautiful design here. Look, it's got a volume knob. It's got a tuning knob. You can tune the radio with a knob. This is something that we don't get nowadays, and I am incredibly grateful for. And it's not just fit and finish. Like, yeah, I'd like to see better materials on the top of the dash, but let's do some two-tone here and extend out that contrast stitch to make it somewhat special. Because you look at this thing and it's beautiful. I forgot what they call it, like Sauvage or something like that. This beautiful leather interior, which, God, is really, it's too expensive at $6,000, but it's nice leather. Let's pack it with something else, because this is where Cadillac, they kind of let themselves down. And frankly, if we're being completely honest with one another, to fix this, the kind of stuff I'm asking for, color and trim stuff, it's about $500 at wholesale to make this interior probably on par with some of the fancier interiors in a Mercedes. So full disclosure, when I first saw this at the 2019 New York Auto Show, I didn't like it. I didn't like the way it looked. I didn't like the direction they were going in, and I absolutely did not like a Cadillac with a V badge not having an insane amount of horsepower. But now that you and I have the benefit of the full view of what they're trying to accomplish between this and the Blackwing, kind of get it. But more importantly, now that I've had the benefit of seeing it on the road and driving it, I get where they're going. And it's kind of like the girl next door. Yes, you and I could get on a plane and meet the Bond girls of Munich, Tahara, Japan, and the Midlands of the UK, but in reality, it's the girl next door that's probably the better one for us, which brings us to the wish list. And here, it's really not about this car, it's about the learning from the engineering prowess, and specifically some of the details, like the fit and finish, color and trim details, that they've learned from the Corvette. Yeah, that one was a moonshot, but the Escalade, that wasn't a moonshot, but it was a technological tour de force within this brand. They should take the learning from both of those vehicles, apply it to this and any future Cadillacs that come down the line to overall make the vehicles maybe not just better, but significantly more competitive, especially on the inside, as we discussed. And this is the point of the episode where I turn this around to you guys to opine in the comments below, or via our social media, MotoManTV, all one word, MotoManTV, all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, can I say, any future Cadillacs that turn up here in the hangar, I would gladly accept them in Velocity Red. Until I see you in the next episode, bis später.